Today's idea that I walk with God in perfect holiness, but states the simple truth that makes the thought of sin impossible. Today's idea that I walk with God in perfect holiness promises there's no cause for guilt, and being causeless, guilt does not exist. Today's idea that I walk with God in perfect holiness follows surely from the basic thought so often mentioned in the text that ideas leave not their source. If this must be true, that ideas never leave their source, how can you be apart from God, who is your source? How could you walk the world alone and separate from God, your source? We are not inconsistent in the thoughts that we present in our curriculum. Truth must be true throughout if truth is to be true. Truth cannot contradict itself, nor be in parts uncertain, and in others sure. You cannot walk the world apart from God, because you could not be without God. God is what your life is. Where you are, God is. There is one life. That one life you share with God. Nothing can be apart from God and live. Yet, where God is, there must be holiness as well as life. No attribute of God remains unshared by everything that lives. What lives is as holy as God Himself, because what shares God's life is part of holiness. I'm sorry. Yet where God is, there must be holiness as well as life. No attribute of God remains unshared by everything that lives. What lives is holy as God Himself, because what shares God's life is part of holiness, and could no more be sinful than a sun could choose to be of ice, the sea elect to be apart from the water, or the grass to grow with roots suspended in the air. There is a light in you which cannot die, whose presence is so holy that the world is sanctified because of you and your light. All things that live bring gifts to you and offer those gifts to you in gratitude and gladness at your feet. At your feet. All things that live bring gifts to you and offer those gifts to you in gratitude and gladness at your feet. The scent of flowers is their gift to you. The waves bow down before you, and the trees extend their arms to you to shield you from the heat, and lay their leaves before you on the ground that you may walk in softness, while the wind sinks to a whisper around your holy head. The light in you is what the universe longs to behold. All living beings are still before you, for all living things recognize that God walks with you. The light you carry is their own light, and thus all living things see in you their holiness, saluting you as Savior and as God. Accept their reverence, for their reverence is due to God's holiness itself, which walks with you, transforming in holiness gentle light, transforming in holiness's gentle light all things to holiness' likeness and holiness' purity. This is the way salvation works. As you step back from your egoic beliefs of lack, limitation, and separation, the light in you from your higher self steps forward and encompasses the world. The light in you heralds not the end of punishment and death. In lightness and in laughter, sin is gone, because sin's quaint absurdity is seen. Sin is a foolish thought, a silly dream, not frightening, ridiculous perhaps, but who would waste an instant in approach to God himself for such a senseless whim? Yet, you have wasted many, many years on just this foolish thought that sin, guilt, and fear were real. I feel like I should have read that. Yet I have wasted many years on just this foolish thought that sin, guilt, and fear were real. We should stop doing this. The next sentence starts, the past is gone, with all the ego's fantasies based on the ego's belief in lack, limitation, and separation gone as well. Fantasies of sin, guilt, and fear keep you bound no longer. The approach to God is near, and the little interval of doubt that still remains, you may perhaps lose sight of God, your companion, and mistake God for the senseless, ancient dream that now is past. Who walks with me? This question should be asked 1,000 times a day, till certainty has ended doubting and established peace. Today, let doubting cease. God speaks for you in answering your question of who walks with you with these words. I walk with God in perfect holiness. I light the world. I light my mind and all the minds which God created, one with me. And that's the end of the lesson. I hope that made sense. You hear voices from somebody just to know that I'm still being heard. Anybody? This is Lee talking into a dark hole.
No, everything is
Thank you,
okay.
thank you.
And
Thank
it
you,
makes
sweetie, thank you.
a lot of sense, a lot of sense.
Boy,
I
doesn't
hope
it ever? Isn't it like we get the lesson we need right when we need it?
yeah, you should read it twice.
Oh, I get the message. But I'll read it again and again and again. Don't you worry, honey. I'll keep reading it. All right, the notes for this lesson. Number 156. I walk in God. Nope. I walk with God in perfect holiness. To make holy is to make whole. Thoughts never leave their source. Dad's t-shirt says, all good. We should remember that. Since we are a thought of God, we remain part of the inseparable oneness of all that is, the one self. Like begets like, and being part of that oneness, we possess all the attributes of our source. Nothing but the attributes of our source can be real. There can be no sin, separation, or guilt because there is none in God. God, who is our source, cannot be apart from us, and there can be no life but the one life that we all share with God. No attribute of God remains unshared by everything that lives. God is in everything that lives. and thus God is in you. There is no life apart from God, for there is nothing that could be outside or separate. God is, and nothing else is. Sin has been defined as lack, yet God, being everything, cannot lack anything that is real. Sin or lack cannot be real, since there is no lack in God. When God creates, he gives all to all. Creation is an extension of that oneness. God is life, and God is what your life is. In time, love is the creative process in which time is utilized to reawaken sleeping minds to their spiritual magnificence as the Christ. God, or this universe, is a supportive place, with God's law being that to give is to receive. All things, being part of the oneness of all that is, look to you in gratitude and desire to behold the light in you. They recognize that same light in themselves. When you realize that all are supporting you in being that light, you recognize that all are playing their part in God's plan for your awakening to your divine inheritance. All are part of that one self, perfect, whole, and complete, and all walk with God in perfect holiness. The question of today, that's the end of the notes. And today's question is, this lesson states that God is life, but it goes beyond that and says that God is what your life is. This being the case, shouldn't we all go about Godding, which would be the act of being only love? Good question. And we can think about that while we listen to Tom's meditation now. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Tom, you're still on mute, saying something. And if you're not, maybe I'm talking to myself again. Seems like you're here. Oh, there we go. Hi, Tom. Still muted, it seems, sir.
Tom is away from the mic.
He is? Oh, I see that now. Oh my gosh, I'm looking up and now I see the mountains and just the mountains. Thanks, Papa. All right, I'll take us into a meditation, no big deal. So today's lesson states that God is life, but it goes beyond that, saying that God is what your life is. And I think that first part of the question is pretty telling. So I'm going to use that as our inspiration for our meditation. We're all sitting here inside of our bodies. And let's take a minute to find the God inside of us. We do that through breathing and this thought process. Take some time to take some deep breaths. I'll do 3 with you, but you can continue to breathe deeply as we enter into a slower state of mind and reconnect with the God inside of us. God is life, and God is our life force, the source of that, the source of our livingness, the life in everything is part of that God force. So let's take a minute Take some deep breaths. I'm going to breathe in and count for 6. Hold my breath for 6. And breathe out for 6 seconds. And I'll count that out so we can all try and do it together. Let's take a deep breath in together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold it. 3. So breathe out with control. 3, 4, 6. Take deep, cool air into your lungs. For a couple more seconds, breathe in deeply. And when you've taken in a deep breath, hold that. We'll hold it just for a moment. 3, 2, and breathe out with control. 4, 3, keep breathing out. 2, 1. Now the deepest breath of the day. Take all the air into your lungs that you can. Let your diaphragm relax so your lungs can fill up completely with air. Hold that breath so your lungs can pull every bit of oxygen out and provide that to the rest of your body. Everything working in harmony. Exhale with control and realize all the things in your body that are happening automatically to take care of yourself. The processing of yesterday's food, everything that happens in our bodies automatically, that's put there, let's say Mother Nature, put there by God, set in order, grown and evolved over millions and billions of years to get to where we are this moment. And wherever you are in this world, realize the level of miracle that it takes to get to just where you are this second. This is a miracle. Just how we're connected, just how you're hearing my voice, and just how we are playing these mind games to make our ego take a back seat to who we really are, to the decider inside of ourselves that chooses to keep pushing when our ego says stop, that chooses to keep loving when our ego says we're surrounded by hate, that chooses to listen when our ego screams to be heard. That miracle inside of each of us is the source of God. And I want you to reacquaint yourself with that. And Tom, if you want to pick up at this point, you're welcome to. I think I've gotten us to a place where we've relaxed our bodies and become more receptive.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Last position.
At least I could hear you a second ago, and then it went all digital. Could you say a couple more words just to make sure I can hear you well again, please?
No.
All right. I think maybe there's a problem with the.
Go
ahead, say something, Tom.
Well, it's probably
No, there we go. Now I heard you say it's probably
probably
mine. Okay, something went out and came back. Let's hope we can hear you. Go ahead.
okay. So get in a relaxed position, and what I want you to do is just become aware that you, as individuated consciousness, can place your attention anywhere you desire. Today, we're going to place our attention on the truth that I walk with God in perfect holiness.
Thank you. You don't have to keep it
okay?
so. Yeah, we can hear you, just not quite as close to your mouth because we're hearing all the pops and stuff. Sorry.
That's
Sounding good.
So as you realize that you are consciousness, we're going to place our awareness on the truth that I walk with God, perfect holiness. Holiness is to make whole, and our mind is whole when we realize the truth. So we don't have to go anywhere to find God because God is inside ourselves. So what I want you to do is just place your attention on your essence, the light. And as you do that, increase the light, the intensity of the light, so it shines, and realize that God, you are light, and that there is no difference. God is unconditional love. Place your attention on awareness of the feeling of being loved unconditionally. I accept the love of God, and I am that love of God. I accept the love of God, and I am that love of God. And as we speak those words, just become aware of unconditional love, being accepted fully as you are. No judgment, no need to do anything perfect, just that flow of love coming your way, and you accept that love. It's only where we place our attention that places or that prevents us from accepting the love of God and of being aware of that presence. But today, we accept that love and just feel the warmth of that unconditional love vibrating in, through, and part of you, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of non judgment, of total acceptance for what you are. And what you are is God's beloved child, perfect, whole, and complete, part of that one self, indivisible. And as you realize that, become aware that it's only our belief that we're not whole, we're not perfect, that prevents us from always feeling that total acceptance. Where we place our attention is where our mind goes. See yourself as God's beloved child, and you are that. You are light, perfect, whole, and complete. And as you let that light shine, you realize that you, God, are one. A total feel of acceptance, appreciation, for you are God's treasure. God, being unconditional love, when He created, held nothing back, made you perfect, whole, and complete, part of the extension of the one self. You are that one self. And it's only your belief that you could lack, that you could be a sinner, that you could have done something to prevent or stop the flow of unconditional love that keeps you from realizing the truth you are. But today, we've made the decision to be whole, to realize that what we call our ego is just our beliefs that we hold about ourselves. And today we decide to place our attention on the truth that we are one with God. And our ego now becomes the belief that we are God's beloved child. There is no lack, there is no sin, there is no guilt, there is no shame, there is no blame, there is no fear. There is only God, and you are whole with that oneness. This is truth. This is reality. And it's only our decision to perceive ourselves as not whole, not holy, that prevents us from bathing in the light, the feel of total acceptance, the loving presence that is God. I accept the love of God. I am that love of God. And as you accept that love of God, your light shines bright. It extends beyond, for it is the all that is light, energy, pure love, pure acceptance. And I bathe in that love. And my ego, my misperception that I realize now was only an illusion, only a mistake of my belief of what I am. It was not a sin. It was just an inquisitive part of the one self exploring what it might be like to experience something other than what you truly are. The belief that you could be separate, that you could be a sin. And as you come to that realization, feel the warmth, the acceptance of whatever you perceive to be God, whether it be the universe, God, Father, Creator, an energy, and just feel that love and commune with that love and hear that voice as it tells you, my beloved child, you are my treasure. I appreciate and look forward to your adventures, for you are the inquisitive oneself that lets me, the abstract oneself, know itself and be and experience you exploring form, being love in form. You are my treasure. I love you. I honor you. I honor your journey, knowing that you have never been apart, that we are together, one self, perfect, whole, and complete. And I shower you with the love, the acceptance. You are my treasure. And as we feel that pure acceptance, that love of God, we honor our journey and we lighten up on ourselves, realizing that there's nothing wrong with playing on the game board of separation. It has no ability to change the truth of what we are. God's love flows endlessly, continuously. I accept the love of God. I am the love of God. I accept the love of God. I extend that love to all, for there is only God. And with that realization, know that today we'll make a decision to walk with God in perfect holiness, to make whole, to heal our mind, and have our split mind, the belief that we could be something other than as God created us. Heal that to the truth. Today, we will listen to the voice for truth, for we walk with God in perfect holiness, and the Holy Spirit will be in communion and communicate with us. I accept the love of God. I am the love of God. And as we realize the truth that we are that wholeness, that oneness, that God is, and there is nothing outside of that truth. Place our attention now upon this world of perception, this world of time and space, and realize that this is our game board, our play school, where we get to be and demonstrate love and form, and realize that God, whatever you perceive, how you perceive it, is in her corner, is in the bleachers, cheering us on, amazed at our journey, and thrilled at our reawakening. For you are the light that lights your world. And with that knowledge, connect with the game token we call the body. And let's make a resolution today with this game token that we will listen to the voice for God, our inner God, and we will, as always, demonstrate what love would have us do. Energy in, all thoughts of separation out. Energy in, all guilt, blame, shame gone. I am the light of the world. I receive the light of the world. For to give is to receive. And as you give that light, realize that it comes back 10,000-fold back, recharging, revitalizing, and lighting your world. And when you feel grounded with the body, take a deep breath and send that energy back to the game board we call planet Earth. And open your eyes with a deep breath, knowing that today you will be love and form. Create a great day. Namaste. The God in me recognizes the God in you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. That was magnificent. I appreciate that. And it's about 7:20 in the morning. I hope you guys are having a great Sunday morning. You're welcome to come up and share and how this makes you feel. I'd love to know. I can tell you this morning's lesson was perfect timing for me. I woke up feeling like I wasn't doing a great job at being a dad. Felt bad about that. Really, really, really want to be the best dad I possibly can. And sometimes that's really hard in the moment. But when I look back, I can see where I did things right. Maybe sometimes I did stuff wrong. Looking back, I can look back with the eyes of God. But a lot of times in the minute, I get caught up in my ego and can't see that I did anything right. And And sometimes I get wrapped up in that thought, at least for a moment or two, till I can get myself out. Or get somebody's help to get myself out sometimes. But really, the thing that gets us out is coming back to the realization that God's in us. Mistakes that we make aren't sins that are going to ruin the world, just the lessons we're learning as we're going through life. That's my lesson today. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'm complete.
Today's lesson, there's a paragraph in here that is incredibly powerful for me. And it says in paragraph 6 of today's lesson, 2 sentences. This is the way salvation works. As you step back, the light in you steps forward and encompasses the world. It heralds not the end of sin and punishment and death. In lightness and in laughter is sin gone, because its quaint absurdity is seen, maybe for the first time. It is a foolish thought, a silly dream, not frightening, ridiculous perhaps, but who would waste an instant in approach to God Himself for such a senseless whim? That was paragraph 6. Again, the first 2 sentences. This is the way salvation works. As you step back, the light in you steps forward and encompasses the world. So we start off with the light inside us. And as long as we keep flashing that light, thinking that we're just hot stuff, and oh, I can enlighten you, and I can enlighten the world, we don't give a chance for the light to do its job. This is the way salvation works. As you step back, the light in you steps forward and encompasses the world. We don't do anything but relinquish our silly idea that the ego wants us to believe, that we are in charge of our universe, that we're going to fix things and make people understand all of this stuff. And oh, while we're doing it, oh, by the way, we'll see if we can't make a bunch of money and get into power and bring our light out there and amaze people. All of that kind of stuff is ego. The idea is that we step back and the light steps forward. And until we're willing to step back from that light that is in us and let the light do its thing, we're going to fail to experience what it means to be enlightened and to see what happens with other people as they become enlightened and the light shines for them inside them and they then have it. The ego is a very, very puzzling source of confusion. It's when we put that back where it belongs, a little tiny speck of our personality, and we let the light shine in front of us. That's when things really change, and that's when we can see miracles. I love that paragraph 6 in this particular lesson. I've read it a bunch of times already this morning, because when I first read it, I kind of stumbled past it and I said, I got to go back and look at that again. And those first 2 sentences are very powerful. Sometimes that's all we need to know to get out of the mess we just got ourselves in. Those are my thoughts about it. I would love to hear what you all think about it.
Well, I do have something to say about it. Good morning, everybody. um,
Speak,
what about
speak a little.
what? Do you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. What I'm thinking this morning is probably something that I need to really, really, really pay attention to, because I think that is a circumstance that has been repetitive since a few days ago, and it has to do with the insistence on letting the ego define the circumstance within anything. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is the following thing. This morning, Lee woke up with this thought that he shared a moment ago, and my reaction to that was simply said, well, I don't think that you're a bad father, because I did have a bad father, and a bad father is not what you're doing. And for some reason, that kind of expression for him doesn't help, because it's some kind of rejection on his feeling. But I haven't been very efficient or very um, uh, good in words, I guess. I don't know if it's the lack of my English language, but I haven't been successful on the idea that whenever he feels like that, is something that I don't get to sustain. I mean, for some reason, when I do this kind of responses to him, for him is something like invalidating his moment. And inside of me, the only thing that I can think of is, of course, I will invalidate it because it's not true, and I will never be supportive of on that, and that seems like it's not compassive for him. So it creates friction, it creates complications in our communication, and I haven't been able to do it right, but I'm getting like a little bit, of course, frustrated, because my intentions with it is not saying that he doesn't get to feel like that. It's just saying that I will not, it's not tolerate, but it's something like I will not support those ideas. He told me a few days ago, you need to give me some slack in this, because sometimes I just need to give you this thought, and I will feel better about it. Sometimes I just need a hug or whatever, but I'm not successful, and maybe that is my problem. That is something that I will have to work through. But I'm not being successful on doing that kind of things that he needs, because within myself is like really just giving it power, give it to that. I mean, if somebody's feeling bad about himself for some reason, and I just go and do a hug and said, oh yeah, that it's a shame, and you don't get to feel like that because this is an ego thought. I don't have the reaction so trained in order for me just to give that like that. So for me, the first reaction is like a rejection, I guess. But it's not a rejection. It's just saying this is not true. So I don't want to play the game. It's not like I don't understand. I do understand, and I do know what is going on. But I don't want to play that game. So whenever these things happen, it's really for me painful because he doesn't feel understood or validated, and I don't want to validate that kind of thought process, and therefore I don't feel heard either. So it's a communication problem that we have because it's some sort of vicious cycle is how you say it in English. I don't know that if you give away an ego thought, of course you will have an ego response. And I don't get so successful on going out of it. And in that part that Tom just said, that that Bob just mentioned, that when you make yourself away from the problem, then you let the light in, is probably the guidance that I need, because he wants me to say some things in order for him to be able to pull himself away, but I know for sure that that is not the answer. The answer can't come from me. He has to find his own way to just stop doing that. And that is not something that will come from me, because if it comes from me, he will, of course, feel it like a rejection, like a judgment, like a unvalidation of his feelings. So I feel like caught up in a trap, because what I have been experiencing with the Course in Miracles is every single time that I feel that like I'm a bad mom because I left my daughter, I'm learning how to just not pay attention to the thought, and I'm not sharing it as often as it came in my mind, because it came a lot in my mind during each day, but I don't give that way that thought. It's not like I don't get to say the things that I'm feeling, it's just that I'm deciding to let the thought be in there, but I'm not willing to let it go out of me into another people's space, because I know that is not true. And I haven't been successful to explain this. Maybe it's my English, maybe it's my own fear, because I'm learning. And I mean, this this morning has been really tough for me. So what I'm trying to say here is that I'm not willing to sustain that kind of thought process, and I feel like I'm in this game. Like, if somebody else is in an ego thought, and I don't get successful on shining a light for whatever reason, I will just cry and wait until something happens, and I will call my holy instant. But I'm not willing to be part of that game, and I'm sorry for my part on that process, and I'm sorry for the things that I'm not able to move away from in order for the light to shine. But this is really hard for me. Doing all of the things that I'm doing are really hard in some form. So if I let myself be the one who just give the pat in the back of somebody that it's in this thing, without like stating strongly, like, no, I mean, that is not true, and I will not sustain that kind of thought process, that will, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm really like going into circles here, but it's just that it's hard to see somebody that you love, that you know that is a really good person, a really good father, a really good man, putting himself so many times in those kind of thoughts and not being successful on just moving away. So when he goes like that, and then I react, and then we get into this trouble, I feel like I'm putting myself in this kind of hole or black hole, and I don't get away so easily. I mean that I can remove myself from the conflict so easily, so I feel like I'm trapped, because then I can't see the light in myself too. So it's weird. It's weird, and it's interesting too, and it's painful.
It's
So
weird.
that's my thought process.
It's weird and it's painful, and every single human being feels that at some point and says to himself, I wish this was different. I wish it didn't happen this way. What I learned many, many years ago, and I just, because I heard it from someone and it just seemed real, is that and I'm not saying this is Lee, I'm just saying that if a person tends to be depressed, you can't go to the person and say, hey, get unrepressed. You can't change that. What you can do is simply put your hand, and this is figuratively speaking, put your hand on his shoulder or her shoulder and say, I'm with you. I'm your friend. That is always acceptable. A depressive person, and I'm not saying this is Lee, doesn't want to be fixed. He wants to be in the mindset that he is for the moment. This lesson and the paragraph that I read, I'm going to apply it to what you said, Adriana. The lesson says, this is the way salvation works. That means this is the way things change. This is how it can happen. As you step back, the light in you steps forward. So what does that mean? It means that you recognize that the duality that is in the world, that is an illusion and was caused by your ego, so you let the ego step back. There is nothing you can do to fix him. But the light then can fix him and you at the same time. That's the deal. There are some things that you're not supposed to try to fix. And it always comes about with that ugly thing that we always call level confusion. Lee knows at certain levels all the time, deep down, that he's a good father, he's a good person. But that doesn't mean that current thoughts that happen to be flooding his head at a particular moment might make him feel less than that. The best thing you can do is let the light go in front of you and let it do its job, and just let him know that you're his friend. And that's the way you stay married for 50 years, which I didn't do perfectly either. I probably did wrong more often than not. I argued, I yelled, I screamed at times for Susie to think differently about herself. But it doesn't work, because all she can think at that point is, I wish he'd stop yelling. And it doesn't even matter what I say, because at that particular moment, he needs to find his own light. And if you step back, the light will be there for him, just in your acceptance, allowing him to think what he's thinking. You don't have to agree, but he didn't ask you to agree with him. You don't have to therefore say, I don't agree with you. He's not asking you for your opinion. At that moment, let the light take care of it. If we would just remember that the light does that, if we don't throw our ego at it to mess it up, miracles happen and abound. Thank you. Maybe
That
there's
that's so perfect, Bob. That's so perfect. Because it took me years to discover that simple thing. As far as it wasn't simple while I was arguing back and forth about things. But when I stopped and I said to myself, I'm gonna let him talk it out, and I didn't respond. and he spoke it out and heard himself talking, he heard himself. So that's exactly what happens. They hear, or I heard myself when someone wasn't responding. I had to hear myself. I had to think about what I was saying. That was the last thing I heard, so it was definitely on my mind when I heard it. It was me, and I had to think about it and say, okay, what's the, you know, what's going on here? Because when he was arguing, I wasn't even listening to what I was saying. I was just like, the ego was just, or what's the word? Defending itself. That's all it was doing, defending itself. And you're right. You don't have to play any game. You can just stay out of his moment that he's having, and it will clearly tell him afterwards that, you know, and and if he's looking for a response, that can be difficult. But I guess I would say I think that Bob's advice was so right on. I'm here. I'm here with you. I'm I'm hearing you, and I don't, I can't respond to that even. But I don't even know if he would say that. But anyway,
It's
that's
funny
the whole idea.
because in some way he's asking me not to respond, but
Right.
he does ask me to let him know that I'm with him with a hug or something. So or something like specifically that he. I mean, there's a few times that we have been able to speak more calm about this, and he said no. It's just that if you said that you don't agree with this because this is not the truth, and then it makes me feel like that. I asked him, so what do you want me to say? And he says, well, I would love you to say like, oh, that sucks, but remember that that is an ego. So he gave me this script, and within myself is like, I'm not here to play this game. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not here to give you the specific words that you are trying to get out of my mouth, because
Sorry,
this is the
it's
work that
funny.
you need to do. And I can relate to what he's asking, because I have been in
Wanted the
his shoes
validation.
too.
Yes.
I have been in his shoes too.
Yes.
But
It's
when
unhelpful.
he asked me that, for me it's like, then you are asking me to play the ego game and I'm not here. So
Hmm.
what I'm really taking deeply everything single word that you both are saying, Bob and
Really
Andy,
true. Yeah.
because
Bob should
this is
know for
so,
sure.
yeah, no, and he is on point on that. But the tricky part, I guess, it is when you are asked to hear without having any participation, but then
Yeah.
there is an expectation, in fact, for
It's
some
a
kind
double-edged
of,
sword.
yeah,
I get
exactly.
it.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel, and I know
I've
that I
been
have
there.
put myself in those places too.
But
So
you know what? You're sovereign and you don't have to. And you're right. You don't have to.
so
And
so
it's
the
not going to
thing
be
is,
helpful
how
for you
can
to give. Well,
exactly
it's not
it's so how
helpful to
can
give. Well, it's not
to
helpful for
anybody?
him to give the answer he wants. He's already got it. It's not
Yeah,
helpful to try to make him feel better, because even in the end, then he won't even. And this is for me too. When somebody
yeah, for me
responds.
too.
Yes, yes, it's a lesson for all of us. We need to,
Yeah.
if we have to talk, then we should be able to talk, but not have an expectation of someone to respond the way we want them to, or even to respond. They could, but the thing is saying, "I'm here." Man, that's golden. That's golden, Bob.
Yeah,
That's golden.
I think I'm gonna apply that the next time, because nothing that I have done in the past have worked to get me out of trouble. So I'm gonna try to do that. And it's hard because my ego feels like, yeah, but if you are there, but you are not allowed to say anything, then you are not being heard, and that creates a conflict. But
And
Well,
it
you,
seems like that
here's
is the
your
thing that
lesson.
I need to overcome. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That I don't need to do
I get it.
anything about it. Yeah.
okay, y'all, let's let Lee tell us. He's right here. Let's have him tell us what he thinks about what we're discussing. He's not.
Sometimes the teacher has to meet the student where they're at. And all I'm asking is for a half a second worth of saying, I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're at. Just so that I know that I was actually heard. and that you really do get where I was at, that sometimes we don't feel perfect. And it's okay for us to go through a moment or two of feeling bad as we reflect on a situation so that we can determine what the way we want to act next time so that we can move forward with success. This morning, I didn't communicate with Dean the way that I wanted to. I've done better. I've done much, 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 much worse. Much worse. There, Dean agrees. I've done much, much worse. But what I'm trying to do is move forward in success. And when I come back and reflect for a moment, sometimes I need to reflect on what I did wrong so that I can figure out what I want to do right next time. And if I'm stuck in the position of feeling like I've sinned or done something wrong, sometimes it takes a couple of minutes for me to realize that this is just a temporary time. This too shall pass. And I want my partner to be with me in time, not at a particular moment. If they get stuck on a particular moment, as in, I feel like I'm a terrible dad, that's not being a partner with me. It's realizing that sometimes I feel bad about myself as a dad. Sometimes I feel great about myself as a dad. When I feel bad about myself as a dad, I want to use those times to learn so that I can feel great about myself next time by doing it the right way. And I can't wrap all of that communication up succinctly in good English either. I don't think anybody can. That's why sometimes we have to write these things out. So this morning I tried desperately to communicate and I didn't do a great job. I'm sorry. But my hope was just to help you realize that for me to be honest and to be able to tell you everything, I need to be able to tell you the bad and the good. And I haven't found a good way to tell you the bad and
You,
feel like it's
you both
accepted.
did
And
a great
maybe
job.
you not accepting my offering myself as littleness is exactly what I need, in which case I'll accept that miracle. I'm here to learn and grow and not to hide in my meekness and my littleness. And I'm getting closer to being less meek and less little than I ever have been. I want to keep moving in that direction. So I'm not here to argue. I'm here to learn and love. I love you, Adriana. I really appreciate exactly where you came from, and I can accept you exactly the way you are. You can always respond to me just the way you did this morning. I'm sorry that I had a hard time accepting it. I was stuck in my ego and had a hard time accepting what you were saying. And sometimes if the ego hears that it's been heard, it has an easier time moving away and dissipating because we can move on and realize it doesn't have to argue for its littleness. And I don't know. That's my 2 cents. And thank
And
you all for listening.
I would say that this has been what the book calls a holy instant, because having having Adriana explain how she was dumbfounded by doing something that she thought was loving, by affirming Lee, she wasn't accepting Lee as he was at that moment. And sometimes if someone starts to stumble on a rock on a path that you're walking with him, your job is not to say, boy, are you stupid for stumbling on that rock? No, you put your hand out and you help him not to fall all the way down. And that's hard because, Adriana, you haven't had an opportunity to learn this lesson. And Lee hasn't had people who wanted to do what you try to do. So he's not used to having that kind of reaction from a mate. Trust me, I know it's true. Therefore, both of you learned what the other one was doing. That's how you learn to be the same. That's how the level confusion goes away. And you can see where Lee is, he can see where you are. And then you offer the light, and the light is how we advance. So we step back, we let the light in front of us go forward. Then the whole thing works itself out, and you can kiss and make up. It's that simple. And it really is simple. The solution is so much more simple than the problem. It's just a matter of how quickly will we understand the problem that we once again got ourselves into. And Adriana, is only a symbol of your lovingness in the first place, that you don't want him to think of himself as something small or something not good. There are other people, the narcissists in our lives, that want to argue for what's wrong with us. We don't want to replicate that anymore. So we don't argue. We just let our light take care of the solution. Anyway, that's the way I see it. I'd love to have people come up.
Yeah, we write a ego for everyone and everything we come in contact with. Relationships are a constant updating of the ego. In any situation, someone is coming from their perspective, their own point of view. You could call it their beliefs as to what they need. Uh, we can accept their version, since minds are joined, we can accept their version of who they are, or we can hold a different version that could be higher or lower of their version of themselves. Uh, our task is to try and write a higher version of that person to see them, I'm going to say, better than how they see themselves. When we do that, uh, we give them permission, since minds are joined, to actually accept that vision and move to that higher uh, idea. When they're seeing a lower vision of themselves, that's what they're projecting out. And we could slip, it's very easy to slip down into their vision of themselves and then start arguing for the rightness of that vision. So whenever we have a higher vision for somebody, you've got to realize that they're on their own perfect path and that you can't force someone to accept the truth about themselves or the higher ideal of themselves. They are the ones that have to uh, remove their guilt or give themselves permission to do that. And so, whenever we hold out a higher vision and those people aren't willing to accept it, then the question is, are we going to allow and trust that they're on their own perfect path? Or are we going to start arguing for the rightness of our own egoic higher vision of themselves and start arguing for our rightness, which causes an escalation? What Lee said is really, you have to meet somebody where they're at. And at any given moment in time, that is meaning that we have to be somewhat flexible in our approach. Whenever we dig in our heels and say, this is the right way, we escalate the problem. So, sometimes whenever someone won't accept your higher vision and wants to wallow in their pity party, you have to just maybe allow them to do that. You don't have to make them wrong for doing that. You just accept them, kind of like Bob said, say, well, I'm here for you. And you just let them stew. Eventually, as long as you hold that higher vision, they may decide to accept that and move out of it. So relationships are very fluid, and we ultimately, at that moment, they might not be willing to accept the idea that they're a good person because they're wallowing in their guilt. But when you come back and things have cooled down, may be able to help them see that higher vision for themselves and try and teach people or help people realize that they're learners and that because of that experience, they can, as Lee said, do it better. They can reflect, they can get the feedback so that the next time around, when they ask, what's my response to minimize my fear, they have better options and be able to take a different approach that might be what we might consider more loving or less harmful. Thank you.
There's someone in our audience right now. If you were to read her bio, she's saying that she is a corporate hippie. I'm leaving out a word or two, but she's a hippie leading with love and checking her ego. The more she taps in, tune in, and turns on her inner light, the better she does. I would love to have her come up and talk a little bit because it seems to be along the same lines, but it's all good. Lee is, if anybody makes a mistake, they need to acknowledge that they made a mistake before they can get any correction to it. So he was doing that out loud with someone he trusts, and all we need to do in most cases is just accept it as it is. Really, just accept it as it is, and then the light takes care of the fix. So I invite people from the room to come on up and speak out if you have a chance to. Thanks.
I had a moment of salvation today where, subsequent to a conversation on Clubhouse, in a room where people were talking about the child trafficking that occurred in Kathmandu, Nepal, I realized that when I holidayed there as a seeker, trying to connect with myself and my spirituality, I had seen this beautiful spiritual city, just captivated by the culture and the temples and the beautiful hotels that I had actually been protected by some other force from the criminality that pervades the city. So I was traveling alone as a single woman in this city that actually turned out to be quite dangerous because it's full of traffickers, trafficking children and women for sex work and other forms of slavery and labor. And I was this naive foreigner who would have been an easy target to take advantage of, but no one did. And it just shifted my perception of my own life from that of entitlement and privilege to gratitude. Like, how lucky was I to have had this incredible experience and experienced the beauty of the city where, you know, I saw the best that it had to offer while so many people were suffering. And, you know, that I was kept safe. So I really felt like God was with me on that trip, and actually God was with me in all my travels, because since I was 19, I've been traveling alone around the world to parts that are really dangerous. So South America, I've been to Morocco, parts of the Middle East by myself as a young woman, and I, you know, took a lot of risks, and bad things could have happened to me, but nothing ever did. So I feel like God has been with me this whole time, and I'm just filled with gratitude that I had all those experiences despite being surrounded by danger, and came out a vibrant, courageous, adventurous woman rather than someone damaged by the suffering that could have, you know, really traumatized me. So I'm just filled with gratitude.
How nice to have had that kind of experience, Linda. It's a lot of it has to do with some preconditioning that sets our egos in such a way that we end up, as we always say here, arguing for our littleness instead of for our greatness. If we start to argue for our greatness, it seems very uncomfortable at first for most people. And it's amazing, actually, looking back, that even happens, because there is so much good in what's going on and in the helpfulness that people bring to bear. The people in this room, and I've heard from almost everybody here at some time or other, have had spiritual breakthroughs and good things that have happened in understanding what's going on. And we all have had experiences where we really messed up. So when we hear other people having the same experiences, then it starts to click sometimes. Otherwise, it's an ego thing again because, oh, poor me, I'm the only one having this problem. And the alcoholic who says, poor me, oh, pour me a drink, will you please? And, and then I won't have to think about all that stuff. But thinking it through and having someone around who accepts us as we are, not trying to make us in the image they have for us. That's the beauty of love, and letting us go through our stuff, and we figure it out. We can do it. Every one of us can. And that's, as you're saying, Linda, that's exactly what was going on in this place where you went. You were seeing both sides of the beautiful city, and you see it as it is, and you accepted it. So in the end, you had a wonderful time, and you learned things, and you can move on to other cities with a little bit more courage, maybe, that there are things somewhere else. And actually, this lesson again, you step back and let the light in your steps, in you, step forward, and then you encompass the world. This particular paragraph 6 in lesson 156, I keep coming back to it because I think it's really powerful. Plus, it's the lesson of the day, so we're supposed to talk about that stuff. So there you have it. Come on, you guys, down there in the room. We know you got a mouth. We know you can talk. And we would love to hear from you, especially people we haven't heard from in a while. If not, we'll just keep on going until
Good
we run.
morning, Rosa, my beautiful Rosa, flower of God. How
Listen
are
to
you
you.
this morning?
Well, thank you for that compliment. I appreciate it. It does mean, my name does mean the flower of God. And it's so amazing because both my names, my first and second name, mean the same. As a woman from Brazil told
What's
which
your
is,
middle
me,
which is
name?
their second? Yeah,
my second name is Jacinta, which is pronounced Jacinta
Jacinta,
in
Jacinta. It's
Spanish.
Rosa
beautiful.
Jacinta?
Yeah.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
beautiful.
I don't know where my mama, I know where she got them, but it must have been God because that's just it. I had the experience yesterday. Um, some of you know that I had taken on the responsibility of being with my aunt, and she put me out. And from that, her children banded me from calling her. She didn't receive my calls, and I call her anyway and leave a message. I figure one day she might happen across the messages and she'll hear the love in my voice and all that. So anyway, as my baby cousin was explaining to me the reason why, and I said to her, you know what? I should have called you to let you know that whatever you guys decide to do, I'm all right with it. That the love that I have will for your mother will trans and go through all of those blockages, and she will realize that I love her. And when I see her, she'll know that I love her. That there's nothing that would stop me except for them getting in contact with her. And I'm all right with that. It's like letting the Holy Spirit do the work. Because when you're dealing with people and situations, everybody has their own mindset. And some of us have the mindset that is so stubborn and so hard that no matter what, they'll never change their minds. Now, when you talk about relationships, and we all have them with our family members, whether they're present, pleasant, or not, we have some sort of relationship with our family and sometimes with our friends. And sometimes you have situations that both parties are correct in whatever they did. However, emotion got in the way of the truth, the hurt feelings, everything. And I know that in my experience with this situation, a lot of times I don't think higher consciousness when I am hurt, when I am upset, when I am totally remembering all those past feelings that I had in a similar situation as a child. You know what I'm saying? You bring up all these things that you thought you had gotten over, that you thought you had forgiven, but then let a situation arise where those feelings hit you again. Sometimes you don't react in the higher self. You just kind of like say, okay, now look, this is the deal. So as I was talking to my younger cousin, I said, you know what? I'm all right. No matter how it happens, I leave this to God. We don't have to talk about this anymore. We don't have to try to explain our situation. None of that is very important. The hurt, the pain, and all that stuff has to be forgiven for myself. I have to forgive myself. And so, with that, I can't discuss your feelings about the situation because, it doesn't really matter. That's like making excuses for your behavior. There is no excuse for your bad behavior except for uncontrollable emotions in most cases. So I have to relax and say, you know what? Holy Spirit knows exactly what to do. Fix that relationship, Lord. And pray that one day it will be fixed and everything will be all right. But right now, leave it alone. Because every time you talk about it, every time you think about it, you pull off the scar and you start all over again. So every time I think about it, I just have to say, God, I forgive me and everybody else involved. Please pray for them. Give them blessings beyond compare, no matter what. I bless them and release them, and I'm all right. Now, do people always accept this? No, but I have to stay true to self. I cannot keep going backwards. I have to let it go and keep moving on. And so every time I see her, I will love her. And, prayerfully, she'll show up at different affairs. And I can express myself there and be all right with that. Let it go. No matter what, let it go. I cannot hold on to cra- craziness. Craziness is not what I ask for. Peace is what I want, and this is how I get it. So, yeah, I have to realize that there are some things that I cannot fix, but Holy Spirit, uh, uh, the Creator, God consciousness, the I am, all of that will come into play, and that is more powerful than I could ever be. All I can do is walk with them and let God do His work. In relationships, sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to just let it go and let God fix it. And when the opportunity arises, be aware because it will come back. It will be. And so that's how I'm complete. Just pray for your enemies. Pray for the conflict to be resolved for the best of all parties. Right? That's what we're learning how to do, how to be free from all
One,
that.
one way of looking at all these things is right now I am watching Lee just being loved by his son, Dean. And he's got his arms around him, and Lee can't enjoying it, and Dean is right there and he's looking back at me, and I don't know if he can hear what I'm saying. Got a big smile on his face, and he's just loving his father, because maybe it's the idea is that we have children to let us try out a few of our faults and foibles and learn they forgive us instantly, and it's not as bad as we thought it was. So it's pretty nice right now. Adriana, you're not on the Zoom session, so I can't even know where you are.
You know what's going on, I bet.
Huh? Okay. Anyway, there's Dean right there having a good time with his father, got his arms all over him. So things work out when we just allow the Holy Spirit that is in us go out and do the fix. the Holy Spirit, the that voice in us is the true MacGyver for any problem. The Holy Spirit is the one that fixes things. All we have to do is let him.
That's right. And it's not about us fixing anything. It's about allowing the spirit to take form.
But also there's
Yeah,
some
with that.
following, right? Like it's not just you, like you sit back and you wait for it to change. You follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit and and um and do the things that the Holy Spirit guides you to do to make the change. And I just wanted to say, because I showed up a little bit late, I was here earlier and then I left, but I'm not exactly sure what the conversation, what happened, what the situation is. But I wanted to respond to some thing that was said earlier, just about relating, and what Tom said about, when you see someone at a like a higher level than they see themselves, like when someone can't see themselves, um, at a high level. And I sort of think I have an idea of what's going on, because I've been paying attention in the room a little bit and noticing some things. But I would like to say that, like, if there's a situation with two people and one person has a negative self-concept, let's say, and then the other person sees that other person as as perfect as they are, and the person with the negative self-concept uh, concept is caught in their, which from my own experience, I know it can be really challenging, um, when it's a strong belief that you have about yourself. um that all the you really need to reprogram that. And I'm pretty sure Andy will say you need to do a self-hypnosis around it. But I would say that the person who is seeing the other person, and seeing how they're noticing their negative self-concept, and not wanting to, and like maybe frustrated with it or whatever, that's their shadow. And so that person, like maybe in the language of the course, you'd say, well, it's your curriculum, it's all you anyway. Whatever you're perceiving is your own perception that you're putting out there. Because if it didn't trigger something in you, it wouldn't bother you. Like, you'd be like, oh, that's them and that's how they feel, whatever. Like that would just be over there, and them over there, and how they see themselves. But if you're bothered by it, then there's some information there for you to look at, either something you're not wanting to see in yourself, something you've seen someone else do, that, like, what does it mean to you, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I wanted to just suggest that.
Hey,
I was
listen.
just thinking. Oh, I just wanted to say real quick a little thing that I heard
Take it.
yesterday, and that, or yeah, yesterday, and it's I am, and then it's going to explain what I is. I is the consciousness, the source, God, and we know that that's the highest consciousness, the higher conscious. And am is the expression of consciousness, source, God. I just loved how they put that, and that really goes with today's lesson pretty well, I think.
Well, I think the lesson worked because Lee just got a terrific back rub, a massage by Lee on his back, the kind where the hands go up and down, up and down. And he's feeling great. He's got a smile on his face from ear to ear. And all of this is to say to us, there's no real problem here if we all just learn to accept each other as we are. That's kind of it's one of the rallying cries of the 12-step program, which was written, I think we figured out, about 25, 30 years before the Course in Miracles. And I think that the 12-step program came from the same guy who dictated this book. And I called this book Sermon on the Mount, Part 2. And I think that acceptance I can't quote the whole paragraph, but it's on page 449 of the Alcohol AA Big Book. I know that. And it says, acceptance is the key, in his case, to his sobriety. Lee is actually pulling the book out now, so he's going to tune in and read it, Lee. Go ahead.
Sure thing. From the good old days.
And the reason I remember it was page 449 is because we know someone who had that as their license plate, and it really stands out. Go ahead, Lee.
Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it's because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact in my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity till I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens on God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I couldn't stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I can't be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. This is a story from a guy who was a doctor and an alcoholic and his way out. And those words were added to this book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book, back in the 30s because it was helpful to people then. It's still helpful now. I still need to accept where I'm at for at least a moment or two before I can move on. And I still need to come to the realization that everything in God's world is perfect the way it is so that I can get back out of my ego and into communion with the Holy Spirit for my answers. And I bet Adriana is on with her daughter Vera now. And it seems like we resolved a lot of things, and I appreciate all of your all help for contributing and helping me fumble through another relationship, I guess.
I think this has been another one of those really good mornings with taking something happening right now, because if this program can't work for us today and I have to wait another week, another month, another year, another eternity, or whatever, then I'm going to go on to something else and find something better. But this does work every single day, every day in my life. And I think we all who come to this room over and over recognize that this works every single day on our behalf if we simply step back and allow it to work. And that's it. That's about all I can say. I'm complete also, as Andy said earlier. I think it was Andy. And anybody else down in the room, you have something to say, come on, bring it up. Otherwise, we know Lee. He's going to let this room.
Okay, wrapping it up. It's no problem to wrap it up.
I know. Well, everything's okay. It's a good time to move on.
All right. Well, I'm complete. I'll give everybody another couple of moments or two, and we'll, of course, be back here tomorrow to read 157. And have a great Sunday, everybody. I am complete.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for just expressing your feelings. When Adriana brought that up, at first I thought, oh boy, yikes. But then I see the lesson that was there for me, and the reminder, of how to allow. And my daughter as well teaches me this, has taught me this actually, doesn't have to anymore. I just sort of remain a backboard, is that the word? No. The person that hears or is there. I don't even know if I hear, because when I hear, I hear an energy. I don't hear what she's saying anymore, because if I don't sink into what she's saying as far as believing. And for me to, and we, none of us really do. We all have our sovereignty in that. When we hear something that doesn't seem to feel in us like it's aligned with love, then we tend to sort of block it in a sense. I guess what we do is I guess I don't block it. What I do is I re-script it in my own head to fit my own idea of what will be the light for me and learning. So yeah, so I thought, oh, yikes, to like like I remember my mother always telling all of our problems, and I remember thinking, oh my God, why does she tell everybody our problems so that they can judge us? But this is very helpful in the sense in this room, especially because we're not judging each other, the way that we would have in the past, and we know that if we are, that we're judging ourselves, and we're not, getting to the point of what's really, helpful and love and all that. So, in a roundabout way, I remember feeling at first like, oh geez, it's like mom exposing our dirty laundry. And I remember how that went, because it didn't feel like it went well when I was a kid. It never felt like it went well, because it was like, oh, this part of the family thinks that they're all perfect, and here she is telling them how we're not. and 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 she'd do it in front of us, so we'd sit there with the shame or whatever, and then she'd wonder why she felt so judged later, whatever that was. But I'm sure that it had a lot to do with ego, of course, and actually in this room is so helpful, because we are free to be able to learn the lesson ourselves in our own life when someone expresses, they're truly what's happening for them in the moment. So thanks everybody for that, and I always love to get right down to the truth, and that's it. Let's not play games. Let's get to the truth. So
Well,
thank
Andy,
you.
I still have that little kid inside of me that gets ashamed that I'm not perfect, for
Yeah,
sure. And,
well,
and to share that with you guys does feel like it takes a lot. And holy crap, have I hung out my dirty laundry? I mean,
yeah,
my
but
God.
I hear you. So have I, though. If I were to actually go back and listen to everything I've said over the past, whatever it's been, months, I would be like, well, honestly, my ego would be whatever. But
Yes, yes,
like, ooh,
yes,
I
yes.
wish I didn't say that. But I would see my growth. I would see the progress, because there has been some.
Well,
Yeah.
Not
I
yeah.
can assure you that not one of the things that has been discussed has ever appeared as a headline on the New York Times that came out, and, and all
But
good, as my
not
T-shirt.
perfect is the standard, right? Like that's
What?
not ever gonna change
What's
for any of us.
what's that?
Yep.
I didn't
Like
hear.
Being not
Yeah, we are
perfect.
perfect. Yeah, we
we're
really are.
perfect in our imperfection. This idea of perfect that we have is actually a false concept,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
There's no
Yeah,
perfect in that way. There's
right.
perfect, which includes that in some way.
At that level, right?
Hmm.
But ultimately, when we are all one and we know that, then we actually are perfect. The body may be imperfect, but that's not who we are. So it's all about the level also. And it doesn't mean that anybody is above or below someone else. Just
Right.
that they're at. That's all.
The level of understanding about our perfection.
There you
You're
go.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're really right. Yeah. And when we say we're perfect, it's if we're not at the level of understanding what that means, then we're going to think that the other people are saying that we're not. Like if
That's
like if,
And
if
right.
we're,
That's
that's
right. Because if
perfect.
I'm
Oh,
perfect, you
did that
can't
come out
be,
right?
right?
Yeah.
yeah. And
But
that's
Yeah. So then that could be a little bit of a space, but that's okay. That's why I'm sorry to say this, but I can't meet someone at their level,
that's
because I don't
exactly what Adriana said to me this morning. She said, I cannot
know.
help you out and support you when you're stuck in your ego,
Right.
because that's going to pull me back into my ego,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to suffer too, and I'm not willing to do that, and
And
I don't want her to. So like
no, you
it's
don't. Of
a
course not.
terrible, it's definitely a two-edged sword. When I'm stuck in my ego, I want them with me in my ego.
Hmm.
However, that's
You
not
want
in my
help.
best interest.
Right.
And I
Yes.
get
Or
that
hers.
now, But when I'm in it, it's really hard to argue for what's in my best interest because my ego's so committed to
To
sabotaging stuff.
defending itself. Yes.
Yes,
So listen, it's like it's so clear, really. So clear.
But that
And
sounds like a real black and white. Like I either get sucked into your ego or I do something. I
right.
don't know what the other
That's
thing
right.
is.
And the
Yeah.
saving grace here is time. I will spend a moment over in the ego, but I guarantee you within 30 seconds, I'm back out and I'm back into a non-duality world. And the time that I dwell in duality is shorter because of this practice, 6 years worth of practicing. And Adriana's holding me to it. She's holding me to the fire.
yeah,
I can
because if
take
she argues with you, you're going to stay there longer.
That's right. And it's hard for me to accept it, but I can accept it. I can go up there and tell her, I love you so much for making me stay in the light. Even though it's hard to even say it, it gets me choked up because I know I have suffered and argued for my littleness most of my life. And I don't have to do that anymore. And if I waste any more seconds of my life doing that, it's a waste of time and breath and energy. And I don't want to do that.
Now I see where you were conflicted, and I understand that completely. Like 100, I experienced that in myself,
Thank
and it
you.
was
It's
kind.
so hard.
Yes,
I
I
don't
do. I
want to
get
keep
it.
hurting.
No, and it's not helpful to be in it. But like for her, would you allow her to just listen and or to even look like she's listening? But would you allow her to just not go there with you and see where that goes? Oh my
Absolutely.
God, it'll be a miracle
It's
for
really hard for me to say that when I'm stuck in my ego. It's very
right.
hard. But I think she's doing exactly the right thing. The faster we get out of these thoughts, the better. And I was trying to argue for her to say, just at least pat me on the back and say, "Oh,
Give you
sorry."
that moment.
We
Yeah,
go into the positive, and it's not that even. That is not absolutely
right.
necessary.
And the
I'm so
thing,
daughter's here. She came out of the closet. Thank you so much.
who did?
She slept in the closet last night, and when I good, you liked it.
Oh,
That's not in there, of course.
I've done that before. I used to sleep in my closet a lot.
A
So.
great night's sleep. You had a great night's sleep. It's wonderful you can wake up this late. All right. We've had a good family-filled fun day here this morning. If anybody else has anything else they want to share, you're welcome to. But I'm ready to go on and have a fantastic day. I hope you guys are too.
It's been a little bit like there's a couple of comedy shows that have been around for a while. They're family shows, and they play some segment of their life out, relationships, and then they cut over to the two of them sitting on a couch or something, discussing what they just played out in family. And that ability to look at things with that kind of perspective can be very helpful. I think whoever created those particular comedy shows, and I'm sure you've all seen them, I think it was a good way of looking at the world. That we get a second chance in all cases. Take a good look at what we did, why we did it, and choose not to do it the next time around. So with that, I'm going to be leaving quietly, as it says. I wish namaste to everyone. I recognize the God in you because I have the God in me that recognizes that. So glad you were all here. Have a wonderful day. And I am complete, and I'm leaving completely in a moment.
All right. Well, as far as I can tell, nobody down there is raising their hand. And so I bid you all a wonderful day. I'm going to close this room. I love you all. Thank you.